world's biggest problems. And he's the man behind Sergey Young and my moonshot of changing 1 billion lives, and a very good friend.
A pleasure, my friend.
Yeah,
and
bon appetit, Peter. I hope you're eating something really healthy.
Chicken soup.
Okay, cool.
So listen, like you, I've dedicated the last almost 8 years, and I've dedicated the next decade on this age reversal longevity front. I think the message is it is the most extraordinary time ever to be alive. And the idea of accepting the fact that we're all going to die in our 80s is the wrong mindset. It's the wrong attitude. That we're living in a world when the speed at which technology is changing is accelerating, and every exponential technology, computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing are being used to explore how we reinvent health. Because we don't have a healthcare system, as you well know and have written. Yeah. We have a sick care system. Yeah. And we're in for some extraordinary revolutions in this decade. It's going to be amazing.
Thank you, Peter. So that's actually one of the few questions that our audience and I wanted to ask you. Like, what do you think is like the most promising in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years for all of us?
So I think where we get our medical care is going to change. And medicine is going to go from, listen, I went to medical school decades ago, and medicine has changed, but really not that much. It's still, you go to your doctor once a year for your annual physical, and you draw some bloods, and you make some small changes. I think the things that's going to happen right now, and the pandemic has accelerated all this, is we're going to move healthcare out of the hospital, out of the doctor's office, into your home, onto your body, in your body, right? The new generation of wearables, consumables, implantables, all feeding information to your AI that is measuring everything all the time. So, I drive a Tesla, I love it. Yes, my Oura Ring, my Apple Watch, yeah, all of those things. And I'm a pilot, and for my airplane and my car, I don't take off, I don't drive out unless everything is working. But for most of us, we have no idea what's going on inside our body. And so I think the ability to measure and then iterate, to make healthcare something that is a continuous process, where your AI, right, your version of Jarvis, I think we're all going to have a version of Jarvis from Iron Man, where that AI is measuring your blood chemistry, is not once a year or twice a year, but like every day. And your AI, you give it permission to look at what you eat, your sleep, the sound of your voice, the sound of your footsteps, and it catches disease early. I mean, one of the things that for folks watching us, I'm trying to change people's mindset. And people say, I don't want to be measured all the time. I don't want to know if anything's wrong. And that's bullshit. You need to know when something is wrong, yeah, because we now have the ability to fix it. Ignorance is the biggest problem.
Yeah, I think we have this old model of, look at cancer. It was case of death 20 to 40 years, right? So in a way, there was zero or almost like a negative value of you knowing that you have cancer, because there is nothing you can do about that 40 years ago. Things has changed. I just wanted to continue your theme of, man and machine integrating, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you a few questions today that I don't know the answers to. Even
okay.
I wrote the whole chapter on the topic of morality, of immortality, and the ethical implications there. So if man and machine will become one, we're going to be more and more in the virtual reality, like in metaverse, if you want. Does it really mean that we're not going to be humans? Yeah, we're just going to be all virtual and we lose our identity. I receive so many questions, and I, frankly, I'm not always good in responding to that.
Yeah. So I don't think being human is a physical manifestation. I think it's a spiritual and mindset manifestation. So, if you run the experiment that many philosophers have done, if I were able to take off my head and put it on a mechanical body, would I still feel that I am me and that I'm human? It's absolutely. I'm an enhanced human. And now if I'm able to upgrade my brain, like Commander Data on Star Trek, and be a positronic brain, but all my thoughts and memories, my feelings, you can't tell me apart. Am I still a human? I think so. And if some of the work that Ray Kurzweil, Martine Rothblatt, and others talk about, which is, you know, uh, uploading your consciousness into the cloud, is that still a human consciousness? We just saw a mechanical heart transplant get approved in France. And, does a person with a mechanical heart mean they're not human? No, of course not. I think, I think our spirit, our consciousness, our awareness, our mindsets is what makes us human.
Yeah, I agree. What I always say, like, we humans, this mutually exclusive mindset, we're so binary, right? We either a man or we are machine. And I do think world is not black and white. It's combination of both, like getting the best from the biological world and engineering world. This is the way forward. Great. So the other question is, I've heard a lot of opinions that the largest healthcare companies on earth in like 10 years from now, it's going to be called Apple, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft.
Yeah.
So I still don't know whether it's opportunity or risk. I actually do believe it's more like an opportunity. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think the current healthcare system is going to be crushed under its own weight. The amount of money we spend and how bad the results are, the system should be ashamed of itself. And so I just finished a 2.5-hour session with my Abundance 360 CEOs with Salim Ismail, talking about exponential organizations. And, an exponential organization is one that's using algorithms. It is experimentalist, data-driven, and the current healthcare industry is not. So, if you had the option to have a company that is measuring all your data, it's finding disease at the very beginning where it can be easily treated, it's all personalized, preventative, prospective, you'll switch. We switch when something is 10 times better, 10 times cheaper. And, I don't think there's any question that the system today is broken and baroque, meaning nothing's changed very much. So a lot of change coming.
Great. The other question, again, it's all of the ethical nature. It's the last chapter of the book, and probably the most important for me and for many of us, because I've just done a TEDx talk, and the whole premise, like, we created the science and technology of extending our lives, but we still haven't created life that we want to extend. There's so many people, struggling with their why. So I usually ask my guests, like, are they ready to live to 150 years? I think I know the answer in your case. So what's your kind of objectives in terms of the lifespan? How many years you want to live, Peter?
So it's a ridiculous answer.
Yeah.
Because so when I was in medical school, I watched a television show on long-lived sea life and learned that bowhead whales could live for 200 years, Greenland sharks could live for 500 years, and my memory is that these sea turtles could live for even 700 years. Yeah. I've not been able to validate that, but I set the ridiculous target of 700 years. The reason I said it was, if they can live that long, why can't I? Now, the reality is, if we can make it another 30 years from today, I think the technologies that will exist will allow us indefinite lifespans. You need to live long enough to intercept the next bridge of technology, that gets us ultimately to a time where we can fix all disease, where we can grow new organs, where we can, begin to proactively enhance ourselves. But it's the point you made earlier, which is, do you have enough purpose and passion to do that? I have two 10-year-old boys, Sergey, as you know, and you have your kids, and there's no question that their lives are full of excitement and gameplay and such. And how do we create that childlike wonder? And I think in order to have a longevity mindset that's going to last you to 120 or 150, and I think getting to 120 should be table stakes for everybody, and 150 is what we should be aiming for, and that buys us, God Almighty, 70 years. It's inconceivable how far we will have gone in 70 years. It's almost impossible. I spend a lot of time sort of predicting the future, as does Ray Kurzweil, or at least looking at the trends. And you can see what's happening over the next 20-year horizon, but get to 30 years or 40 years, and it's really impossible when we have quantum computing and AI at a level like never before. So if you believe that you can, if you believe that there is the potential to reverse age, then I have no question it will be doable in the next 30 years at the outmost.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But do you have a passion, a purpose, a vision that will last you those extra 50 years, 100 years? We'll see.
Yeah. Peter, I've heard you launching a new conversations, right? Like a podcast on people who are trying to find the passion.
Yeah.
Any early findings that we can borrow?
So one of the products I'm working on next, it's in early development. In fact, you're one of the first interviews I did on this, is what I call Passion Finder. And it's a product that will be, $10 a month or free if you can't afford the $10 a month. My mission is to help people find their passion. And I'm interviewing people to understand what, where did they get it from? What have they done with it? And I think people, one of the most undervalued aspects is that the people who are crushing it on the planet, who are really changing the world, they're driven. They're driven by an emotional need to solve a big problem, or an emotional desire to, to create something magnificent. And doing anything big and bold in the world is hard. And you need the energy, and that energy is an emotional energy. So it isn't a logical, Vulcan-like, well, I think I'll do this because of A, B. No, it's like, I want to fucking do this. This is awesome. I want to go and change the world.
Love it. Thanks. The other question is, and obviously I do explain the story about CRISPR babies in China, and a lot of concern that I hear, that the question is like, is it even ethical to edit human genome? Because people are afraid of like creating superhumans and all of the rest, just really increasing inequality gap.
I mean, the way I think about this is, and those of us who have kids, I mean, first of all, when you're looking for a mate to have a kid with, you don't randomly pick someone off the street, right? You're looking for someone who's got the intelligence or the looks or the wealth or the, charm, whatever attributes you want. And you're selectively, you're doing your first genetic selection when you make that choice. And then when your kid is born, you give it the best medical care, you give it the best food, the best education, the best clothing. And, it is controversial, but I'll say it. Why would you not want to begin with the best genetics? Now, I think it's easy to say, we're going to make sure to cure disease. I think that's no brainer. But now the question is, well, is it ethical if it's not evenly distributed? I can understand that argument that if only the wealthy had access to it, but what if everyone had access to it? What if it were cheap, right? Biotech is relatively cheap. It's the cost of getting there, but once you get it, it's pennies per dose for most everything out there. And then the question you have is, well, you know, honestly, it's the individuals who are not perfect, who have hardship, who have problems, who really break the mold and do something extraordinary. And would you be eliminating that? Would you be eliminating, you know, the works of a Helen Keller? You know, and these are all valid conversations, but I think it's kind of ridiculous to think that people are not trying to benefit their kids every way which they can. It's just a natural human instinct. And so we'll see. It's not a matter, you know, I mean, we're doing that today with in vitro fertilization, where we're choosing a male or a female, you know, embryo, and we're going to eliminate people with disease. So it's the early days, but it's not 50 years out or 30 years. It's the next decade, next 20 years at the most.
Great. I have 3 remaining questions. One just came from the audience. And just a little bit of pretext. So when I talk about far horizon of longevity, something which awaits for us in 25 to 50 years from now, I always thought like human brain AI integration is really over there. But like, look at what is done by Elon Musk and some other great minds and hands in this area. So do you think we're ready to integrate with artificial intelligence, and we can like abandon this fear that AI will kind of win over human intelligence, etc.?
So great question. You know, the first person I heard really speaking about this work was Ray Kurzweil, who you know, who wrote, along with myself, the foreword to your book. And Ray's early projection was that we would have high bandwidth brain-computer interface by the early mid-2030s, which is a decade from now, right? 12 years from now. And I was kind of dubious, but then I look at what's going on, and it's not just Neuralink, Elon's company. There's a dozen companies that I know of that are doing extraordinary work. And those are the ones that I know of. I have to imagine that the defense departments of every major country on the planet is working on this, because what's, you know, when you talk about super soldiers, it's making them stronger and making them smarter. And so I imagine that increasing the intelligence of your citizenry, your you know, employees is one of the most important elements. And so will we see high bandwidth brain computer interface in the next 10, 12 years? Yeah, I think we will. And it blows me away, right? So my cell phone, when I'm on my cell phone, some of the computation gets done on the phone. The more difficult problems like image recognition and voice translation and so forth get sent from the phone to the edge of the cloud, right? It goes to a cell phone tower on a 4G or a 5G network, and the computation gets done there, and the answer comes back. And so where we're going to be is our brains are like the cell phone. Our brains can't get any bigger, right? We have some 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synaptic connections. And if our brains got bigger, they would, you know, you wouldn't be able to be born. I mean, you wouldn't get through the vaginal canal. And so we spare our mothers that difficulty. But what if you did with the brain what the cell phones did, which is your brain gathers the data from your senses, and if it has a difficult problem, like, oh my God, there's Sergey Brin, I need to say something super intelligent, I better go to the crowd, to the edge of the cloud, and learn about quantum computing or something, and then get the answer back, and then I can say it. I mean, this is, you know, this is where we're going. It's enhanced human intelligence, or, you know, what's called HI. And one of the things that another person working in the brain-computer interface world, Brian, what's Brian's last name? Uh, totally just blanked. Brian Johnson, who runs a company called Kernel. What Brian said is, listen, it's not about AI versus humans. It's about AI versus HI. It's about AI versus, enhanced human intelligence. And so, by the way, when I forgot Brian's last name, I went to the cloud, but I used my fingertips.
Exactly. Yeah. You just had pretty inefficient interface,
I
but it
do.
was
It
there.
really,
Yeah.
it sucks. And our eyes, our ears, our fingers are really slow bandwidth
Do
manufacturers.
you think it's going to be invasive or non-invasive? I don't know if you have a view on that.
Yeah, well, they're both. So obviously, Neuralink is invasive. A number of them are. One of the companies, my venture fund, Bold, and Sergey, who is the visionary leader behind Longevity Vision Fund, is also one of our partners. We're really working on investments that move the world forward in health. One of the investments we have is in an amazing woman, Mary Lou Jepson, who's the CEO of Open Water. And Mary Lou was at Facebook, at Apple, at Google, at MIT Media Lab. She's brilliant. And she realized that red laser light goes through skin and through the skull. And so, it's the equivalent of holding a flashlight up against your finger and your finger turns red. That's the red light coming in. And she's built the technology that can use red laser light holography to be able to go and image any part of the brain or the body. Her goal is the equivalent of an MRI that's 1,000 times cheaper, 1,000 times smaller. But her real vision has been to use this technology to be able to read and write on neurons. And she's demonstrated this, that when a neuron fires, the surface of the neuron ruffles as the ion channels open up. And you can visibly see that from the laser holography. And then you can also use that same process to cause the neuron to fire. So I want you to imagine having on a cap. It was a movie from the 70s, I think, called Brainstorm, which was an amazing movie. And it looked like that. So it's non-invasive. I think that's super cool.
Amazing. We can talk forever, but just for the sake of time, final question, Peter.
Yeah.
What is your advice how to stay on longevity bridge for all of us? Just to be in a good, healthy and happy condition for another 10 years so we can enjoy the benefits of this technology.
So I think, Sergey, it's the advice that you give. For me, it breaks down into 5 things. One is the basics of diet, exercise, and sleep. On the diet front, doesn't matter if you're a vegan or a keto diet or a paleo diet or a Mediterranean diet. The key is get rid of sugar. No sugar in your diet. If you can minimize carbohydrates, and it's hard, but by the way, if you go on a sugar carbohydrate diet, you'll get over that addiction after 3 or 4 days. So along the diet lines, it's intermittent fasting. I typically will not eat before I just broke my fast because I got up at 5 a.m. this morning. But typically I'll skip, I'll always skip breakfast, and I'll try and actually go till 2 p.m. and then I'll eat between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. And then try and fast the whole next cycle. Exercise, it doesn't have to be heavy exercise. It's light weights and repetition, and maintaining muscle mass is the key thing. The third is sleep. I prioritize sleep more than ever have. I really shoot for 8 hours and a minimum of 7 hours, because sleep is one of the most important things for brain health. And then on top of that, it's mindset. It's your attitude. It goes back to if you've got a mindset that is bigger than your years, right? If your vision is you're going to die at 80 and you retire to enjoy the last 20 years of your life, those are all messages to the universe to say, you know, my atoms are done on this body, take them back. So having a big enough vision, bigger than yourself, I mean, I am so excited about where the world is going. It's like, I want to see it all. I want to get to the moon. I want to go mine asteroids. I want to go and see what it's going to be like to live in virtual worlds. It's like, this is the most extraordinary time ever to be alive. And I don't want to miss that. So that is driving me, right? I have 2 10-year-old boys. I want to see what they're like in 50 years. And then I'm sure I'll want to see what their kids are like 50 years after that. So that is the fourth thing, right? It's having an expansive enough passion and desire to, and then the final thing is what I call not dying from something stupid. And you write about all of these things in your extraordinary book, and I commend it to everybody. Go read it. It is a very consumable, very easy to get, and it will give you an overview of the entire longevity space. You know, for me, I go every year either to Health Nucleus at HLI, or I go to Fountain Life, which is a new company that Tony Robbins and I just started, and I will upload myself, full body MRI every year, brain MRI, brain vasculature, coronary CT, full analysis of my blood series, a Grail test. And for me, it's to know what's going on in my body. Very few of us know what's really going on in our bodies. And the last thing you want to do is, you know, be ignorant and die from something stupid that could have been found and preventable. And then final thing is wear your seatbelt.
Well, this is statistically is actually plus 2 years to your lifespan, statistically, right?
Say that again?
Seatbelt, wearing a seatbelt is plus 2 years statistically to your life.
Yeah.
Peter, thank you very much. You're an amazing man, an amazing friend. I'm very grateful for your contribution to the book.
My pleasure.
And thanks to everyone for joining us today.
I love having you in my life, and thank you for the work you're doing. Super excited for the investments we're doing together between Longevity Vision Fund and Bold. And anyway, congrats on the book. Be well, my friend.
Thank you, Peter.
Take care,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.